something a little different. Um, I made it short earlier, and it's kind of my fault. So my kids are early. I'm actually in their room for them to go to sleep or whatever. But anyway, I'm trying to be like too loud. Because for some reason tonight they wanted me to hang out in here. So I'm like, okay, well, cool. I'll just hang out with them. But anyway, I say I can't get mad at them because um it was a lot of thunderstorms today, and we were like, okay, well, since it's a lot of thunderstorms, we usually go out run around the town, but we were like, cool, we're just gonna chill, whatever. I like how I be talking about them like they teenagers or something. But anyway, we stayed in or whatever. Weather was bad, and naturally it rained all day, so a lot of times they go to sleep when it's been raining all day. So the whole day I've just been up trying to figure out things about like the YouTube algorithm and all that good stuff. Experimenting with it, making videos. And yeah, I mean, something that I like to do, I like to bake them a batch of cookies and stuff when they wake up. And they usually don't eat cookies that late, but they ended up doing that. So earlier, they were just going crazy, like just running around doing their whole thing. And I was like, can't get mad at them. It's getting late, but what you gonna do? So yeah, right now they chilling. And tonight they just did not want me to leave the room. Like I read them a few stories. We kind of hung out a little bit, and a lot of times I could read them a bedtime story. They go right to sleep. Then I'm good for like a couple hours. But yeah, tonight they've been like, you know, they want me to hang out. Which, like I said before, it's understandable because, of course, like we're always hanging out, right? But yeah, so it's cool. They chilling. I'm in their room tonight. I'm usually out where my setup is, or like I'm kind of working on a studio across the way. But you know, I guess they call it being a trad wife, I guess, or a traditional mom or whatever. So one of the perks of being a traditional mom is that you can just kind of make your family like the center of the universe. Shout out to Rick Lane 1234. Hey, um, so yeah, but originally I was gonna come on here and talk about the whole. I was supposed to do like a follow up live about the protests and stuff because by the end of my live, my kids got up, and well, my daughter really. My son usually when he get up, he be chilling, but when my daughter gets up, it's like, yo, like she be like, yo, you need to get to work. You never know what's going on with her. Hey, I appreciate the sub, Rick. So yeah, I just kind of tuned in tonight, but I was like, everybody's talking about the anti-ICE stuff, and I'm not gonna lie, I had such a cool weekend for Father's Day. I hope you guys had a good Father's Day as well. Um, and I don't know, I just kind of felt like, just kind of chilling a little bit. So as always, I come on here every now and then. I get my regulars here, and they kind of pick my brain about stuff. I pick their brain about stuff. Um, and I just kind of chill. And like I said, like I'm just starting to realize my daughter. So last week I got them some crayons and some construction paper, and I'm looking over and I'm like, they've been drawing on this wall. They've been really drawing on this wall, but that's cool. I will go over there and clean it up. Um, Shout out to Brizzy. So yeah, I mean, this was just kind of an impromptu. I appreciate the subs too. And y'all, if I butcher y'all name, I am not trying to butcher y'all name. I need to start wearing my glasses for real. So I'm gonna just put memory tag, shout out to memory tag, and I try to pay behind to everybody in the chat or whatever. I appreciate the sub. And then I also try to check out other small content creator channels too. I don't know. I just started doing this because I don't know, being a stay at home mom, it can be a little mundane or mundane. I don't know how to pronounce it, but people in North Carolina, we say words how we say them. So I'm sorry if I got grammar police in here. But I was like, it's a good way to be social. Originally, my husband and I, we what you call it? We moved to this small town, and I was like, town's so small. I was like, I want to get to know some more people and stuff. I still want to network. So it was like cool. So I just started doing this, and this is kind of like something that I do to just kind of, I don't know, be more socially connected. Like it's cool to talk to people in the neighborhood, but the neighborhood is so small. So it's like, it's good to talk to people on the internet because everybody is everywhere. But yeah, so I guess, if anybody want to put in the chat what they think about like the ice stuff or like how your Father's Day went, that's pretty cool. But, I'm just kind of chilling. You know what I mean? Like I said before, a lot of times I do have stuff on here. Um, like I have like little videos and stuff, but I was like, man, I'm just kick back, especially because my kids was like, forget about it. And that's the thing. When you got little kids, I thought kids start getting picky around like being teenagers and stuff like that. No. Like they start making demands from the time that they can make a demand. So yeah, I'm just kind of chilling with them tonight. I don't even Bookie sleep. That's the first. I think what I'm gonna start doing is just kind of hanging out here while they sleep or whatever. So I guess I'll just talk about like Father's Day and stuff like that. So I'm gonna say this: the Father's Day is weird. Um, and it's sad that it's weird, but it's weird because I guess the elephant in the room. A lot of people like they're not in touch with their dads, right? So for I know my husband and I, we have that situation with our dad too. Now, he didn't really grow up with his, and I'll speak more about mine, but my father, he's deceased. And then the weirdest thing, my stepfather, he's deceased too. So I'm like double dead daddy. You know what I mean? Like I don't mean to get dark too quick, but it's just like Father's Day, I tried not for it to be depressing. And then like it's so messed up because it be people with some real problems. Okay, I'm not minimizing the fact that my father and my stepfather are deceased. I'm not trying to minimize it. But when I be thinking about people who be like, you know, Father's Day don't mean nothing to them because they don't know their dad, I be like, well, call him. He got a phone number. You know what I mean? And I'm not trying to be funny. You say, Bubba, dad is not at, as you say, at my, oh, he's in Maine? Okay. Yeah, that's pretty far away. I hope you're not too far from Maine. But yeah, so it was cool because my husband was in town and everything. So, of course, he got to spend time with the kids and everything. And I don't know what just kept echoing in the back of my mind was that it's a lot of times when women be like, I'm the mama and the daddy, right? So I was just got to thinking about that too, because I was like, say DS here on North Carolina. Okay, down south here on North Carolina. Oh, okay, at Maine. But Maine is a different state. I'm sorry if I read that wrong, Rick. But yeah, I thought you said he's in Maine. You know, hey, shout out North Carolina. I'm in North Carolina. Um, but yeah, so like I be trying not to upset people on Father's Day. Okay, here in North Carolina. Yeah, so I be trying not to upset people. I know it's a sensitive day for people. Like I didn't really my family is just so I'm gonna keep it 100 with y'all. I'm like, oh, okay. How is Maine, by the way? Is that like is I just assume Maine is like Alaska. Like, is it like cold year round up there? This is a quick question. But you say it, oh, okay, he'll probably send me the rest. But yeah, so it's okay. Okay. Um, but yeah, I'm okay. Let's just unpack this. I'm kind of trying to respect like my other family members because they're bigger on social media than I am. I have a lot of family members who they got quite a bit of followers. Whatever, they probably said some stuff about. I'm sure they've said stuff about me that I don't know about. That I'm gonna find out. Well, anyway, I am one of the few people in my family who was born out of wedlock, whose grandparents are born out of wedlock, and I'm pretty sure you guys have heard the statistics that like I think they say 8 out of 10 black children are born outside of wedlock. And the funny thing of being 2 out of 10, if I'm quoting that correctly, is that those of us who are born within wedlock, our parents just kind of keep us away from everybody, even other family members. So, with such a high statistic for the parents not being married, as you could imagine, I have a lot of cousins. I even have siblings who were not born in wedlock. And that is the weirdest dynamic, right? I don't know if it's weird. I don't know. It's weird for me because it's from my perspective. Now, I know a lot of people are like, oh, my parents aren't married, and it's not a big deal, right? Because it's so common. And then um, on the flip side, what was I going with that? It's not weird to say that your parents, you say right now, I'm at two dad house. Yeah. Oh, your second dad, your stepdad house? I don't know what two dad mean. But like, yeah. So it's very common for people to be like, yeah, my parents are not married. Um, Now for me, that was like weird because I could not imagine obviously because my parents were married, I could not imagine like my parents not being together. Now, my dad, my biological father passed away, right? So when I had a stepdad, it just kind of made sense to me. Like growing up, it was like, oh yeah, my dad, he's deceased, so I got my stepdad. Cool. And then I had this funny thing of assuming that everybody who had a stepdad or didn't have their biological father, I assumed that their father was deceased because that was my situation. And that's something that kids tend to do, right? Like, if you don't teach them different, like my mom never really took the time to explain stuff to me. And then by the time my stepdad came into the picture, it was like, okay, I got my mom and then my stepdad. Like, duh, I have a stepdad because my father is deceased. Say yes, my dad left me when I was yeah. See, like yeah. So I grew up thinking that. Shout out to Rick that was like, dad left when I was 2. I'm thinking when I was growing up, dad left as in dad left life. Like, like dad's not alive because I could not imagine like my dad not being around or whatever. And then especially because let's say like my grandpa and then my dad's brother, shout out to Lead Quarter Trucker. They were around, and then I had people who knew my dad and stuff like that. They were around, so it was like even though my father was not physically there, um, he still had like a presence from all his relationships and stuff. Putting that on the shelf over there. Now, in talking about, I hate to bring this up, but like my cousins or like my half siblings and stuff like that, their dads, like how Rick was saying, was like, oh, my dad left at 2, right? And I never really, you know, you say I see my dad when I was 8. Yeah, I never really processed that. And I'm gonna tell you what's so horrible about the fact that I never processed it. It's also the fact that I grew up in this super duper over Christian, and I'm not taking shots at Christian, but I grew up in one of those Christian environments where if you're not a certain way, you're the bad guy automatically. So it's like if people have children out of wedlock, it's not casual. It's seen as, oh, something's wrong with you because you had kids out of wedlock. Like every time you make a mistake, you it's like you going to hell, like automatically. So then anybody who's around you, it's like, oh, something's wrong with your environment because you're around people who are having kids out of wedlock. So it was like highly judgmental, right? But at the same time, it was highly hypocritical because I had like people like in my life that I wouldn't say were bad people. They just so happened to be born to people that were not married. And let's just be real. Most of these people are not stable. And a lot of them were just having like a good time and they weren't planning on having kids. It just happened. Like how most situations happen, right? But I wasn't growing up in that environment where it was like I was, if you could just have a depiction in your mind of like the Lion King, like how, how Mufasa and Simba were on Pride Rock, and he was telling Simba, like, hey, this is Pride Rock. Everything the light touches is ours, and over there in the dark corner, hey, that's the Badlands. You don't want to go over there. That's kind of how I was like programmed. So as I was growing up, I was thinking to myself, like, unfortunately, this belief was teaching me. Say, do you want to know my channel? Yeah, I can check out your channel after I come off here. But I just had this thought that, like, okay, the way that the church was teaching us was that we're supposed to be here to help those people. Like, those people are down here. That's why they're not married. That's why they don't own their own property. We're up here. We do things the right way. Okay, shout out to Rick. We do things the right way and so on and so forth. Okay, cool. And as I got older, I started realizing that that's not cool. Like you can't look at a person's situation and go, "Hey, I'm better than you because I was born into a better circumstance." And then I just assumed that since okay, everybody know the right thing to do, everybody knows that you're not supposed to be sleeping with anybody unless you're married to them, stuff like that. Everybody knows the rules. So if you break the rules and you suffer the consequences of those rules, then you're suffering the consequences of your actions because you're a quote unquote bad person or you did something wrong. So that was my mindset. Now that I'm older and now that I'm like dealing with more people, and let's just be real, I feel like a lot of people that toot their own horn for being born in wedlock or not having children out of wedlock, they got lucky. I think the overwhelming majority of people who did not end up in a situation that everybody else ended up in is because they got lucky. This is why I say this. I know quite a few people, including myself, who's had more partners than their current spouse. And let me see if I can lay my baby down, y'all. With that being said, oh, it's all good, Rick. I appreciate it. Uh oh, oh. She's laying down on her own. Hold on 1 second, y'all. Let me make sure I get our blanket and everything. 1 second. All right. Had to get her a blanket real quick. I'm surprised she stayed asleep. Usually I put her down. She's like, ah. So I'm gonna see how long I can do this, and I gotta get her on blanket. Like just to let everybody know, I'm putting my kids to sleep. I got a son, got my daughter, and my daughter she be tripping. Anyway, she is cool tonight. Anyway, so like I was saying before, I like how she's usually up to kick the stand over, and I just kicked it. So what was I saying? Oh yeah, and hopefully everybody can still hear me. I had to go and do some stuff. So basically, I'm starting to realize that. Appreciate it, Rick. Let me know you can hear me and everything. So basically, those of us who didn't end up having kids out of wedlock and stuff, I feel like a lot of us, the overwhelming majority of us, got lucky. The majority of us who had mom and dad been together before we came into the world, mom and dad built something together, they were married. I feel like that's the true meaning of privilege. A lot of people try to say, oh, privilege is when you're white or privilege is when you're rich. But to be honest, being white and or being rich, 2 years I'll be a teenager. Oh, shout out to Rage. um, but yeah, being white or having money and things like that, I don't feel as though that's necessarily, something that makes you privileged. I think the fact that you have certain opportunities is what makes you privileged. And when you have your father and your mother, that makes you privileged. Um, because you have a support system. You got two people who have your best interest at heart and they mutually care for you because you belong to them. And when you have people who, let me think about it, how to put it. Take like people who have step parents or people whose grandparents had to step in, or even worse, people who had to go into like the foster care system, things like that, right? When you take those people and consider them, they don't have the same safety nets. So I was growing up thinking that, okay, everybody around me, their parents, they know that, they had this kid, they're supposed to be together. And if they're not together, it's because something catastrophic happened. Something catastrophic happened. And that is simply not true. And if you're being real, you got, kids, they mess around and have kids. Let's just be real. You got teen parents and stuff out here. You got people in their 20s that go off to college, they mess around and have kids, or you have people who go into the military, they do stuff, they have kids, and it just is quick. It just happens. So many people they'd be like, "Oh, it happens." And there's always this controversy if I bring in the A word that kind of sounds like extortion. Um, and I kind of don't want to use that word. I don't want to be offensive, but you know what I mean. Like to not complete the goal of bringing the child into the world if you want to make it super wordy. When you have that kind of situation, some people don't choose that route. Some people they have children anyway, right? And I didn't know anything about this. I had both my parents, they were taking care of me and stuff. So it's like Father's Day was always an exciting day for me. Like I was thrilled because it'd be like I get to kind of double dip because it was like I get to spend time with my grandpa and then I get to spend time with my stepdad. And they were not at odds. You know what I mean? It was like my stepdad and my grandpa, they were cool. You know, if my father were living, like no question, like I would be with my father. But since he wasn't alive, then of course my stepdad was there. This was never and I never had a weird relationship. Like some people, they have to deal with like their stepdad acting as if he's their dad, right? And my stepdad, he never crossed that boundary. I'm so grateful for that. And he tried to help me understand that, hey, I'm here, and he always respected my dad too. He was always like, I don't know to what extent his relationship was with my dad. My dad passed away when I was young. Um, and so, but I do know that my dad had a big reputation. My mom had a big reputation. And so, with that being said, it was no surprise that my stepdad would know my dad. My dad was very renowned. Whatever. Now, putting that on the shelf over there. Um, when it comes to like Father's Day, I get the privilege of, you know, enjoying my husband being with my kids, our kids. And the reason why I say, I guess I get a little possessive with the kids, especially online, because sometimes I say our kids, and I'm bound to have a troll that'd be like, yeah, which one of them kids is mine? So I try to be careful. But anyway, um, there's so much that comes with um, what you call it, raising a family, what they call a traditional family, specifically with my husband raising our son. That seems so rare, especially like these days. It's like I even made a video about this, how my son is the only black male that I've known since the day he was born who grew up with his biological parents, right? Which is kind of crazy. Um, Oftentimes, the black community, we talk about other communities, other races of people, how they stick together, how they have family units, things of that nature. And when we have family days like Father's Day, like it's so easy to talk about Mother's Day in the black community because it's a lot of what you call it. It's a lot of single mothers. So like that's like seen as like the norm in the black community. Um, it's like you're demonized if you don't say that it's strange. It's even to the point where men in the black community, they don't even think of like Father's Day as like a family day. It seems like a day of grieving, right? More so like shout out to the black dads that get to be a dad to their kids. And I'm not gonna lie to y'all. This, like, I have to say, as an adult, so I have to say, like, ever since my husband and I has had our kids, we've had the best Father's Day experiences. Mainly because it's like we could not control our what our dads did, but we could be in control of, like, even when we're not getting along, we never create a situation to where our kids are in the middle of our disagreements. Like I've seen a lot of parents and especially mothers be like, "Oh, well, if you don't do this or that, then you can't be a part of the kids' lives, or I don't want to be with you anymore. I'll find a better man to help me raise this child or whatever." And that's so in my mind that's crazy, but it's so common. And I didn't I when I was growing up and I saw it, um when I was growing up and I was seeing this stuff, I did not think that this was so widespread. Rick says, I don't know, I'm not that. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And just real quick, like, for kids 17 and under, I try not to interact with them so much, especially because it's nighttime. But I do appreciate you tuning in. I think it'd be good for you to go to bed at this hour. But here's the thing: is that now I'm getting to a point where I'm seeing a lot of times in the black community, they talk about the condition of our community, right? They talk about how we don't have certain things, or they talk about how they didn't have certain things growing up. And now we're getting to a point where we're at an age as black people where we can, yeah, so we can do better, and we're not. And that's the devastating thing. I feel like every year, every Father's Day, it kind of makes, I'm not gonna lie, it kind of makes me sad because it's like, dang, you know, just like my son is the only black boy I know who's growing up in wedlock, you know, born with his father and his mother. Parents have been together for some years, blah, blah, blah. Made sure we had a foundation before we had him. Um, for the first time, I'm seeing my husband like raise his kids, from the day that they were conceived. Like, and I even have to say, even with my white colleagues and the other races of friends and stuff that I have, um, their dads are not don't have that same, what's the word I'm trying to say? Consistency is what I want to use. Like their dad is not consistent in their life. And it's not for lack of trying. It's not, he doesn't want the kid or whatever. It's always some drama with the mom or the relationship didn't work out or whatever. So then now dad has to play by mom's rules a lot. And it's almost like mom uses the fact that she's single as leverage against dad often, right? So in that, looking at like my husband, how he's interacting, my husband's black, I'm black, obviously, our kids are black. So it's like we're in this awkward place because even when we would interact with other black parents, we will find that a lot of times they're raising their children separate. It's a lot of co-parenting in the black community, and for some reason in the black community, co-parenting seems to be more socially acceptable. So like, I can't tell you how many times I've interacted with black women and they assume, my husband, he works, I'm a stay-at-home mom, so my husband, he's out on the road, he's working, he's a truck driver, all that good stuff. And it's like a lot of times since I'm with the kids, like I said, I'm stay-at-home mom. A lot of times a black woman will assume that I'm taking care of the kids like on my own. And then when I tell them, oh no, my husband, he works out of town. I think that's a common thing that women say. Like I'm starting to think that women claim that even when they are single mothers. And then when he comes into town and we actually spend family time, I feel like a lot of times I let those women down, which is a weird, weird vibe because it's like, hey, husband's gonna be in town. We got a few plans. I'll link back up with you. And it's like every time I had linked back, it just felt like, like how women say they're single by choice, or they say that they chose to be a single parent because that was the better option. It's like, wasn't really the better option. It's like, it is not to, I'm not like taking a jab, but I'm just thinking like, if it's such a, if it creates such tension between um you and other people, is that a bad, this is what I'm trying to ask. I've noticed that every time I would have family time and then come back to my friends, it would be different every time. I had a friend that actually told me, like, this is one of the reasons why I don't really talk to like my friends when they become like domesticated or a family person because you don't have time anymore. And to me, I felt like, well, yeah. And I just felt like at our age, it would make sense. It's like, we're in our 20s, 30s. Some of my friends, they were in their 40s. A few of them were outliers in their 50s or approaching their 50s. And I'm like, shouldn't we get to an age where we're taking care of the young people? Shouldn't we get to an age where we're not in the nightclubs? where we're not online, where we're not getting the BBLs, when we're not trying to be in rap videos. Isn't there a certain age where we sit down and let the young people go out and make their mistakes? I mean, a lot of women who are older than me right now are trying to get with guys who are like in their late teens and early 20s. And, if it was let's say if it was a 30 something year old guy trying to date like a 19-year-old, 20-year-old girl, oh, he's grooming, he's a bad guy. But it's a lot of women my age, and I'm gonna just be real with y'all. They look at teenage guys. They do. They date these young dudes. And like you even have like some celebrities who are doing this. You got women who are like in their late 40s dating guys who are like in their early 20s. And I don't do the double standard thing. So my whole thing is if a man can't do it, a woman shouldn't be able to. But that's ageism, that's a whole different conversation. Um Here's what I'm getting at. In the black community, we always talk about change and all this other stuff. We always talk about how we need to do better. But at the same time, we're not doing what we are claiming we need to do, or we're not fixing whatever it is that was broken when we were growing up, which makes it so frustrating for a person like me because I feel like, and I try not to say feel so much, but the way that I think about it is if we're talking about our upbringing and what we didn't have as children, now it's up to us to do better now that we're the adults. And at the same time, I respect people's decisions, but I'm also starting to see the hypocrisy of it. Going back to like the black women that I was hanging out with, and when I would go and spend time with my family, they would be like, "Well, you don't have time for me." It's like that's this. I hope they understand that this is why their parents were not structured because in order to be married, in order to raise a family, you sacrifice a lot. And these have to be things that you're willing to sacrifice. For example, if you have children, you can't be in the nightclubs all night long. You know, you can't drop your kids off for days, even weeks on end. Yeah, you can, but you shouldn't because your children need you, right? But there are so many parents who do, right? But then at the same time, the parents who choose to make these choices, they see parents like myself and Josh who we don't make those choices. We are, always working on taking care of our family. We're committed to each other. We're committed to the kids, right? And it's like, okay, it almost feels like we get judged. like, like marriage, the way that black people talk about marriage and raising a family, they make it seem like it's such a dirty thing. Which brings me back to Father's Day. It's like Josh and I, we're not a Christian family or anything, but we do share very similar values and we respect the culture here in the United States. They have Father's Day or whatever. We work with a lot of Christians. And so because of that, quite naturally we get, Christian holidays off and things like that. And we also acknowledge the fact that we should be social. So just putting this out here, the whole let's just go into the religious stuff. Like there's this group called the Black Hebrew Israelites, right? Although we don't 100% agree with their ideology, we have our beliefs are closer aligned to theirs than most people. Now, the whole screaming on street corners, talking down about white people and all this other stuff, we not with that. dressing up like Power Rangers and marching in formation. We're not with none of that stuff. But as far as, reading and studying biblical principles, yeah, we're all about that, right? That being said, here in the United States, it's mostly a Christian country, and they have all kinds of holidays that conflict with the Bible a lot. And for that reason, we don't celebrate a lot of those holidays. They have a lot of pagan based rituals as well. We don't partake in that. For example, we don't do Christmas trees in our house. That's one of those examples. But we do respect people who do it because we're in the United States of America. They have a right to have a Christmas tree up in their house, right? Cool beans. Now, when it comes to the holidays, again, we work with people who are very adamant about these holidays. So instead of us, there was a time when both of us were working before the kids. We were over the road truck drivers. And when we were both over the road, if business stops because of the holidays, it was fine because we were both on the road together. So we would go on dates. And so we would just hang out and it was cool. But, now our dynamic has had to change. Again, there goes that dynamic where you have to adjust. Now, if we were just baby mama, baby daddy, girlfriend, boyfriend, we could continue to do whatever we're doing and then, just kind of do this whole co-parenting thing. I do my thing, he does his, and then we just go from there, right? But since we're married, we have to make decisions together while at the same time compromising, if that makes any sense. And that's very difficult, right? Even with situations outside of our marriage, like Father's Day. In the Bible, there's no like Father's Day having to be in the month of June. Nowhere. However, we know that here in the United States, it's kind of like not when there's this expression, when in Rome's do as the Romans do. But it's kind of like if I were to parallel it with like biblical principles, if you take like how Joseph was in Egypt and he was taken to Pharaoh, and of course Egypt had their own traditions and values and things like that. That's more of the analogy that I'm making here. So even though, which is a really cool analogy because he was in bondage or whatever, he was sold off, just like how the black people here in the United States, we came here in bondage or whatever, and now we're subjected to the culture here. But at the same time, it doesn't necessarily mean that we have to live by what the culture is here, if that makes any sense. Well, anyway, we find this middle ground and we go, okay, we're going to take that time off and we're going to observe. Because even though we see this as, I wouldn't necessarily say a pagan holiday, but it's a custom here. I don't know if it's pagan or not. I haven't done the research. But it's a custom in America, Father's Day. We take that time to acknowledge how people view us. And what we're starting to see is that Father's Day is a day where people have to acknowledge their family structure. Like Mother's Day is always about, yeah, it's easy to celebrate Mother's Day. It's easy to love mom. It's easy to buy mom some gifts, right? That's an easy day. But then you got Father's Day where you have single mothers. That's already a hard conversation to have. Not only do you have single mothers, but you have fathers who a lot of times have a strained relationship with the mother. Excuse me. So like, sorry about that. when you have take my husband and I, our situation, we think to ourselves, it's like it's 2025. We always hear this narrative about how black fathers are not in the family because the white man did something. It was slavery, it was the welfare system, it was the prison, the criminal industrial system. And I'm like, I'm sitting here, I'm like, okay, from what I've seen in my generations, it's a choice. People have chosen to we know where kids come from, we had the kids, whatever. Back in the day, it used to be whoever you slept with, that's who you married to. That's the end of it, right? Then it became if you got a kid, you got to get married. So hey, if you sleep with them, you don't have no kid, keep it moving. You got lucky. But then it became, if you have a kid, you got to lock in. Okay. Nowadays, it's like you don't have to be married just as long as you take care of your kids, which in my mind, I'm thinking to myself, how could you take care of your kid? How could you take care of your kids? And this comes from, again, me being kind of like sheltered, right? Because I grew up, my parents were married. So in my mind, I'm like, the only way to take care of your kids is to be married. That's before you do anything else, you have to be married. So that's my sheltered mind, right? So what I've learned is that no, that's not the case with everybody else. A lot of people feel like, since I pay child support, I'm taking care of my kids. Since my kid, I've heard people say, at least my kids know what I look like. At least my kids know who I am. And I'm talking about people that they don't visit their kids, they don't feed it, they don't live with their kids. People I've known, and I'm notice I'm saying people, I'm saying men and women. I've known men and women who haven't seen their kids in months. Like they've left their children with their parents or with their best friend or something, and they're like, that's better than what my mom did. At least I left my kids with somebody who's taking care of them, right? Cool beans. So I didn't know that was common. And a lot of times I would be a little insensitive because I did not know. Like it's not that I'm being exclusionary or um like how the church was overly judgmental. It was that I was completely ignorant. I had no idea. So that's another reason why I kind of like doing this YouTube thing, because I get to interact with different people and I get to hear from different people and stuff like that. And so, like, looking at my situation now, I'm starting to see why married people segregate. When I say segregate, I mean married people stay away from single people unless it's for like business or entertainment or whatever. They don't people who want strong marriages, they typically stay out of the way of single people because single life and married life, they are both equally complicated. In my opinion, I think single life is way more complicated. Um, there are so many nuances in each relationship dynamic that one can oftentimes conflict with the other, right? So, with that being said, I had to learn the hard way that since my husband and I chose to be married, chose to only have children with each other, and that's it, that created kind of a wall between us and most people. It even created a wall between us and other married couples. This is what I mean by that. You got a lot of married couples who have stepchildren. Well, you have a lot of married couples who are deciding to get a divorce. There are other dynamics that most people they don't even think about. Like especially single people. A lot of times single people think of marriage as till death do you part, right? And hmm, when you do get married, it's work. Like every day. And it's not just dealing with the other person, it's dealing with everything outside of your marriage as well, right? The outside pressures and you having an exclusive relationship with your spouse that nobody else in the world understands because they have not been with you and your spouse since the beginning, right? So it's an exclusionary dynamic automatically. Something else that we've learned, not all marriages are created equal. So we used to think other black married couples are the same as ours because they got this whole thing, black love and all this other stuff, the black family dynamic, all that good stuff. And that's not true. The other black families, they are families as well, right? And they have their own cultures and they have their own dynamics and all this other stuff. So I hate to use the term monolith, but we're not all just the same. And we're learning that. We're spending so much time learning that we don't have time to teach what the world is doing to our kids. And it's cyclical because it brings me back to my upbringing once again. My parents never taught me about, children being born out of wedlock or, people getting divorced and remarried and all these different dynamics. They never taught me that because they were so busy. They were so busy instilling things in me that would allow me to bring value to my children. Let me try to unpack that a little bit. It's kind of like, I don't know why I want to use the analogy of like potty training your kids, right? When you go to potty train your kids, and right now I'm potty training my son. And potty training boys very different potty training girls. Um, your son, when he go to pee, he learns that he can pee anywhere. You don't spend time telling your son where not to pee. You spend time telling your son to pee in the potty. This is the bathroom. This is where you use the bathroom. You don't spend all your time teaching your son, now don't use the bathroom in the living room. Now don't use the bathroom outside. You don't spend all your time doing that because there are infinite ways to do it wrong. But there's one way to get things right. You got to use the bathroom, go to the potty. Simple as that. As it relates to what I'm saying about my parents instilling in me certain values, they didn't have time to stop and be like, okay, now, you better use a condom now, you just hit puberty. Never that conversation. But then I would have like friends in school, have my cousins and all that stuff. And they'll do that. Like they'll be like, oh, I remember when my cousins they hit puberty around the same age I hit puberty or whatever, and their parents were talking to them about birth control. I did not know what birth control was. I ain't gonna lie to y'all. I didn't even know what it was. All I knew was my mom was teaching me hygiene. She was teaching me hygiene. She was teaching me how to take care of myself, you know, during that time of the month or whatever. she wasn't talking to me about having no baby, you know? Like, I mean, yeah, I knew where babies came from because I saw family dynamics. I saw families with children, things like that. So, yeah, I kind of figured, well, in my green way of thinking, I was like, oh, father, mother, child, bam. You need, and then I would be so sheltered. I'd be like, it's supposed to be husband, wife, child. I never even thought of like mama, daddy, child. I never even thought about that. Never truly crossed my mind. I always thought, and then it became again father, mother. So I was like, okay, if this person is not a husband, at the very least, he's the father of that child. And then it got even more complicated because you'll have some chicks. I had an aunt who she had more than one baby daddy, and that was a lot of math for me. You see what I mean? Like, so it was like, why are there so many fathers? You know what I mean? Like, it was just throwing me off. Like, too many fathers, you know. Never really thought about what that meant. I just saw all the drama that came with it. That being said, as you could imagine, when her kid hit puberty, it was about protecting yourself. It was about you better not bring no kids home. It was about if you have a kid, you could go down to the welfare office. The conversation for her daughter when she hit puberty was very different from the conversation that my parents were having with me when I hit puberty. Even that, I got to talk to my mother, I got to talk to my stepfather, and I got to interact with people on my father's side of the family. I had a support base. It wasn't just my mama. Like with my cousin, it was just her and her mom. That's all the input. Her father wasn't there. The guy that she thought was her father was not there. Um, it was just her and her mom. It was just whatever my mama say, that's what I'm gonna do. So the mindset there was like, I couldn't even talk to my own cousin, which was wow. I couldn't even talk to my own cousin because it was like we came from being little kids who was just playing and hanging out to your mama don't want you to have a baby. And now you looking at my mama like she weird because my mom didn't put any condoms in my backpack. And it was like, I'm looking at you weird because your mama didn't talk to you about hygiene. Your mama is talking to you about, you know, being intimate with a guy, being inappropriate. Like in my mind, I was like, your mom think you a 304. How does that feel? Like I felt sorry for my cousin. Like, yo, your mom went straight to you gonna have a baby because you hit puberty. I thought that was embarrassing for her. At the same time, she felt embarrassed for me because she was like, dang, your mom don't care if you have a baby. Your mom didn't tell you about like, I think this thing, I still don't know what it is to this day. I think it's called an IUD. Like, you know what I mean? Like, your mom didn't talk to you about that. Your mom, oh, maybe because your side of the family, you got your mama and your daddy, you got money, so it don't matter if you have a kid or whatever. That's how she's thinking. We in the same family, Black community. We are in the same family. We have the same. There I go. Once again, I started to say we have the same grandparents, but we don't. And that's the issue. That's the issue. Okay, other communities, they might have different parents, they might have different grandparents, but the idea of a family structure is still uh, important. For example, a lot of times people know, like, if you split from your child's parent and you get with somebody else, hopefully you get married this time. Hopefully. A lot of times when people split, they were hoping that they would have been married the first time. In the Black community, it's like they've made marriage taboo. Like, marriage is like a, it's almost, and then in some circles it's like a dirty word. And so when you're trying to talk about Father's Day, it's like even I feel the judgment mounting on me for being with my child's father. Like, I had a falling out with one of my brothers because he did not like how my husband is a very structured person. And my husband, he's not even that strict. He's not strict at all. Like, something like, my husband doesn't want like a lot of people running in and out of our house, for example, all hours of the night. If you come to visit us, you have to visit us at a decent hour. After 8 o'clock at night, it should be an emergency. In my opinion, that should just go without saying. Speak out, excuse me, shout out to John. It says, oh, are we qualified to speak on whole communities? I am. When it comes to my community, I don't know anything about other communities, but I grew up in my community and I know my community. And I think that's really crazy that in my community, if a man who's married to his wife says, I don't want people, and I don't want people showing up to the house at night because we have kids going to bed at a certain hour. They got their baths and stuff like that. I want for the house to be settled, right? Um, cool. Why is that a problem? Let me, John, real quick, let me ask you a question. Do you think it's normal for people to be coming in and out of your house at 9:30 at night? Do you think it's normal for people to be coming to visit your house at like 11 p.m. and you have two toddlers? Like, the fact that that even had to be a conversation between one of my family members and my husband, that embarrassed me. Because my husband and I, we have a lot of nieces and nephews, and when they were little, we were like, "Oh, it's about to be dinner time. It's about to be the kids' bedtime, and we shouldn't be, you know, hanging out here making noise, drinking, all that. You get yourself together, and then you go home. You know, you should go home. You should be home at night." Like, so the fact that we even had to have that conversation, like, for me, I just felt like, wow. And then the fact that my brother took offense to it, like, when I was single, I was like, hey, I get up and go to work in the morning. I usually, sometimes I get up as early as, I was an early riser. So I would get up at like 4 o'clock in the morning, go to the gym, get cleaned up, go back, make breakfast, go on my way. So I would tell people, like, my family knew before I got married, don't I don't do visitation past it. I was more strict. I was like 6 o'clock, we shutting it down. After 5 o'clock traffic, we shutting it down. You know, my husband, he was nice, like, yeah, 8:30 ish. But when the kids, they sleep at night, we don't want them get woken up in the middle of the night, no loud music. I even had a rule, I don't allow smoking. I've never allowed smoking in my home, ever. I always say, hey, you're welcome to smoke on the patio, on the front porch or somewhere. But I don't want nobody, no cigarette ashes and stuff in my house. I don't even smoke. I think it's disgusting. But yeah, it's like my husband came into the picture. It was like automatic disrespect, which was crazy to me. It says, Yeah, 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 yeah. And say you grew up around every black person. I grew up in my community. Normal is specific to each individual. Some people eat dinner around 4, some eat at 8. Well, in my community, um, we usually had dinner sometime around like 7 o'clock at the latest because a lot of times we got up in the morning. And so like like I said, I came from a really, really structured place. And like I said, I'm down here in the South and everything. And I don't know if you're in the South. I can't remember. I think you've told me before, John, but um, a lot of things shut down early in the South. And even here in North Carolina, things started slowing down around about 8, 9 o'clock here. The only thing that's really going on is crime past about the hour, like 10 o'clock at night. And then here's another thing about the black community, too. We have this saying that you need to be in the house before the street lights come on. That's the thing. So, like, we have like cultural norms where, there are things that are inappropriate. And I speak real heavily on my community. Now, I did go to like white schools and stuff. I was in the Air Force, and I know that white community is very different. It was a culture shock for me when I was in the Air Force. It was a culture shock. There are a lot of things, and then culture is a thing. By the way, that's another thing in America too. I don't know why people try to act like there aren't stereotypes and social norms and cultures and subcultures. Some things are appropriate with some communities and some things are inappropriate. Like people have their things. And I think it's also kind of interesting that, I'm strictly speaking from like me, like my life, my experience, my culture, if you will. And I'm starting to realize a decline in my community. I don't know what goes on in the black community in Alabama, but I did grow up with most black communities here in North Carolina. We're very, very tight knit folks. But I'm also seeing the descent of my folks here too, to where the things that we used to be, I would say celebrated for. I would go as far as celebrated. There used to be a time when we took pride in our neighborhoods, our families, our children, and the way that we did things. And I'm not even gonna lie. The I grew okay. I would just say I'll blanket it out because in the black community it's mostly like um AME, Baptist, holiness, non-denominational, and I'm talking about Christian denominations. Christianity is a big deal. Black people in the South, um, and the reason why I brought up these different denominations is, oh, how could I forget Jehovah's Witness? Like the the black superstars of the United States of America, from Michael Jackson to Jay Z to who else? The Wayans brothers. Um, they grew up in a Jehovah's Witness household. So, if I had a family member who was Jehovah's Witness, I knew to walk a little differently than if I hung out with like my family that was like Baptist. Like my father's side of the family, they were Holiness Church. So the main religion in the black community, you're either Christian or you're Muslim. You're just one or the other, right? Um, and so you can have two brothers. You can have a brother who's Muslim. You can have a brother who's Nation of Islam. Those are two different religions. They are not the same. You cannot do the same stuff. You cannot have the same haircut. You cannot eat the same food. It's not the same. Or you can have a Christian, a Baptist household, And you can have a non-denominational household, both Christian, two different walks of life. Um, what was it? There was another. I think holiness is the one where you can't even drink alcohol. Like I had a cousin that I was really cool with. I brought up the idea of drinking alcohol. The whole conversation shifted. And I wasn't even talking about like having a beer or drinking hard liquor or anything. I was just talking about communion, you know, like the I think the Catholics when they have communion, they have actual wine for like the bread and body of Christ or whatever. The body of Christ, blood and excuse me. Let me speak correctly on this. The blood and body of Christ with the bread and the wine. Just reading the chat real quick. It says, "Are you speaking of your specific neighborhood or the whole Black citizen of America? People are different from neighborhoods. I'm talking about my community, and I'm talking about my people as a whole. And I don't know, like John, I don't know what nationality or what race or whatever that you are, but Black people, we are very dialed in, and we are we're very connected. We are so connected. Like I can vibe with a Black person in Idaho, you know, and it's just I think a lot of it has to do with I'm gonna say number one, when we were brought here, just because one Black person might have been sold in Mississippi and then another one was sold to North Carolina, don't make them any less family. Um, we're just geographically separated. Not only that, but a lot of for example, I had a distant cousin in Alabama, and she literally worked at a truck stop in Alabama. I used to be a truck driver or whatever, and I just went to go buy a few things. I was a truck driver. She worked as a cashier at the truck stop, and I just so happened to be humming a song that she knew, and she grew up hearing this song, and she and I we just started talking. We were singing the same songs. My husband and I we were at the checkout register, and I found out that she and I were cousins because we had family that were in Mississippi. I had an uncle who moved out out east, and her family went back down to Alabama. And then over time, we don't have internet or nothing, but they lose touch. But we were singing the same songs, we were talking about like the same things. And then she started asking about my family name, started asking about hers. Um, and then we were talking about different family reunions and stuff. And we found that just by talking to each other, she knew a family in North Carolina that I'm kin to, and she was kin to the same folks. So, like I said before, like there are so many different ways that Black people that we talk. And then they say this thing with like ebonics and all this other stuff, but we're very well connected. We really are. Um, Even like I got, for example, my father. His folks are from up north. His folks are from like Connecticut, New York, Pennsylvania. Dare I say? Um, my mom mostly from the South. And I just wanted to put this out here too. My great grandmother had 23 children. Okay. Like they had a lot of kids. So it's not uncommon for me to bump into somebody that's like, oh, you one of the 23. Like that's like a thing. So it's like we're very, very, very connected. Um, from culture to our music to the food, like we are very, very connected people. We're very, very aware. So when I talk about the depreciation of the Black community and the statistics of how we're spiraling downward as it relates to like the original conversation with Father's Day, um, I'm literally seeing the decline in my generation, and it's it's kind of making me like broaden the way that I think. Um, because again, for example, growing up in the black community, there were black households. Like you wouldn't talk about, let's say if Mr. Ben lived down the street, you didn't call him like Mr. Ben, you called him by his surname. It was Mr. Badum. So it was the Badum house. You know, you didn't call Mr. Levi Levi. You called him Mr. Davis. And he had the Davis house. Now in the black community, it's becoming normalized to like be on Section 8. It's becoming normalized to not have a house name. It's becoming normalized to not have a head of household. And for us, that's devastating. Now, other communities, that might be the norm, and that's fine because that's their culture, that's those communities. But in our communities, our fathers, the men are the heads of the house. Like you can even talk to a standard baby mama who's like better with her baby daddy. She will literally tell you that she expected her baby daddy to be the head of the house, to be the man of the house. I don't care if you talk to a black chick in New York. I don't care if you talk to a black chick in California. I don't care if you talk to a black chick in Texas. We pretty much we it's just I don't know if it's just like written into us or our DNA. Well, according to my beliefs, I do believe that. But for the most part, yeah, we're a people. We've been here for a very long time, and we've been connected. Long before we were brought here and sold apart from each other. Like, yeah. Let's see. It says, uh, yeah. So, okay. I just want to make sure I was up to date with the chats and stuff. But yeah. Um, and I'm starting to learn. Even shout out to John. Even the questions that are being asked about, one thing I learned when I was in the Air Force is that white people delineate. And I don't know if John is white, but um, like for example, no, white people are individualistic. That's the better way to put it. They're very individualistic. So, like, let's say if I know like the McCaffrey brothers, right? Yeah, they're brothers, but they don't see themselves as like the house of McCaffrey. You know, it was just one of those things. Um, and so I don't know. It's like they're very individualistic. For Black people, no. Like to be individualistic is like you get treated like you're weird. Like, and that was a problem that I had growing up, and that's the problem that I continue to have. A lot of times, Black people accuse me of trying to be white because I don't group think. So it's like I'm gonna give a perfect example. If most Black people think that, and this is an ongoing thing, I've even been attacked on other social media platforms for having this opinion. But right now, a lot of Black people are saying, as far as the whole immigration issue goes, um, Black people shouldn't really have an opinion about it. It ain't got nothing to do with us. Now, for me, like, I think about like the letter of the law, and I think about if you're doing something illegal, then you should be held to the extent of the law, right? And in my opinion, not necessarily the fullest extent of the law. I think people should be looked at from a case by case scenario, right? So, for example, you got somebody who came to the country illegally. They came here on purpose illegally. They commit a bunch of crimes and things like that. Yeah, punish them to the fullest extent. They coming over here breaking laws and they're committing crimes. Yeah, but then if you take somebody who's been here for like 10 plus years and they are having issues with their immigration or whatever, and they haven't committed any crimes or anything, I think that should be looked at differently. There's a lot of black people that jump on me for having that opinion. They thinking illegal isn't illegal and that's it, you know. But for me, I feel like, even though I'm not an immigrant, I'm not a migrant or anything, I still think that people should still be humanized, or they should still be treated as people. But most black people are like, and I'm talking specific, I'm not talking about like black immigrants and stuff. Again, black people from like Haiti and Jamaica and all that. I don't know what their culture is. I don't know. I'm not gonna sit here and act like it. But there's this movement, the whole FBA movement. Black people have had lineage here for a long time, things like that. African Americans, people who've been here, majority of them brought here slaves. They have this whole movement that's like, yo, we don't care about the whole quote unquote black and brown coalition. We don't care about that. If you're here legally, you need to go. That's how they're thinking. For me, personally, I think that, because at first I thought with people crossing over the border, I was thinking those people are going to get in trouble. Not somebody who's been here for like 20 plus years, old people, and they haven't done anything wrong. They're just working and, they contribute to society, they pay taxes, they own businesses, they employ people. Like, can we handle the first part of the problem first? Like, because in my opinion, I felt like the border being open during the Biden administration was a problem and it needed to be corrected. But it just feels like everybody is getting lumped in. And some of these folks who've come here, let's say, like, let's just put a number on it, 20 years ago, came here legally, right? They had kids, their kids had kids. Well, I wouldn't say, I put a number on it, I put 20 years. Let's say they had kids, their kids are grown, their kids are in college. Okay, their kids have birthright citizenship. In my opinion, I don't think that the person who's been here for 20 years should be getting rounded up by ICE. I just don't. I don't. I do agree that they broke the law in coming here. But if you were able to raise a functional citizen, I don't think that those people should be targeted. There are a lot of what I'm going to call foundational Black Americans. There's that whole movement. Well, no, they call it like a lineage. And it is technically a lineage by definition. But they just feel like it's dumb for me to have sympathy for that or to put this much thought into that, because these other groups, take like Jamaicans, they come over here. Oh, I'm gonna give you a better example. Nigerians, and the funny part is I'm part Nigerian. And they would be so mean to African Americans or black people or whatever. And they'd be like, you guys are down here because you're lazy and all this other stuff. So now a lot of foundational Black American FBAs are like, yeah, now they're getting deported and, this and that is happening to them. We shouldn't care. But in my opinion, I do think that we should put more thought into that. That's just my personal opinion. Oftentimes I get attacked for that. Let me see. La la, it says, I don't think you can overgeneralize any community. We all are different. We all are the same. Okay, and you're entitled to your opinion. That's fine. Um, and I respect your opinion. But I'm just talking about my personal experience. And, you know, uh, what I have always lived with and will continue to live with. And there are a lot of people who have contrasting opinions to mine, and that's why I love this country. This is America, you know. And again, as a Black woman who is in the Black community, well, not currently in it, but from the Black community, I'm seeing issues. And here's the thing: when you say we're all the same, this is why I don't buy that in particular. when you look at statistical data, when it comes to the condition of Black people in this country, oh, there is a great line of distinction. When it comes to employment, unemployment rates, when it comes to incarceration rates, when it comes to the rate of children being born out of wedlock, those things that truly matter that are not affecting other groups as much as my group, yeah. So, like, just like now, like, people can tell me what my opinions are because my community is in such disarray that people feel comfortable telling me what I should think, what my opinion should be, and things like that. That is a condition of a group of people who have little to no power, if any. Um, and that is becoming more and more and more of an issue. We're not all the same when we get pulled over by the police. We're not all the same when we try to go to college or anything like that. We're not. But at the same time, we have to respect each other's opinions. But here's the thing, there are groups of people in this country that can walk around and say they don't see color or they can be oblivious to what other folks are going through because they're not living with those effects. And that's fine. But it's up to me to be wise. Like, I live in a majority poor white community, this neighborhood that I'm in. If I go outside tonight and go walking down the street, I've even seen people that look like me get pulled over for absolutely they haven't done anything. They just drove through here. I've gotten pulled over. They looked at my papers. They saw I lived here. They let me go. Right? But let's say if I was up here visiting a friend or something like that, be a completely different story because I don't look like I live here. Certain There are certain places I cannot go. This is 2025, and I was told there's a bar up the street from here, and they told me, there were people who were in the local grocery store here that's just walking distance from my house. I was thinking to myself, hey, I'm gonna go check out this bar down the street. I was told it's not safe for Black people to go to that bar any hour of the day. Do not go to that bar. It's a lot of people in the Klan who are up there and blah blah blah, which is fine. We're in the South; they're everywhere, right? But I have to be mindful of stuff like that. I can't be like we're all the same. I can't live. So, you know, it's a different reality, right? And so, not just that, but I actually got one of my most liberal friends. I didn't know that this town was known for like Klan rallies and protests and things like that. I didn't know that. I had no idea. Now, I might sound a little dumb because there are Confederate flags everywhere up here, right? Um, but even when I did, there were times when I did interact with people who are in the Klan and things like that, in the Ku Klux Klan. And it's just like you stay out of their path, they stay out of yours. When they have their rallies, when they have their little marches, when they have their swastikas and all that, you let them march down. They get their permits. They have their, bullhorns and speakers. This is how I feel. That's another thing Black community don't like about me. I feel like just like, feminist organizations can come out here and express their views. LGBTQ can come out here and have a parade. Um, Black Lives Matter can come out here. Anti-Trump rallies can come out here. Also, Trump rallies. Hey, Klan want to come out here? They got permits. Free country. I don't like what they represent, but hey, if this is their space and they're not committing any act of violence, it's America, man. I mean, that's the best I can say. It's America. No, I don't agree with it, but the beauty of this country. And when I say I don't agree with it, I'm saying just as I don't agree with like the LGBTQ, I don't agree with like the Klan, just like I don't agree with Black Lives Matter. I don't agree with none of them groups because this is another thing about me. I am not bending over backwards to be a part of no group. In 2025, I mean, yeah, you got people who really feel strongly about it and they network based off of how they feel. But me personally, I just feel like I have so much work to do with my family and my community. Because here's another thing, too. And I think a lot of people these days get away from this. Communities are made up of families. Now you got communities based off of people having a common idea. That's pretty modern. But I will tell you this, it's not sustainable because if you don't have functional families, that community will decline inevitably. If you don't have functional children being raised in functional households, that community is going to dwindle into extinction. Simple as that. Um, you get functional families from a functionally married man being married to a functional woman and they have healthy children. That's in this country, that's like rocket science. For some reason, that's like weird. In the black community, even LGBTQ people in the black community have told me, like, this ain't it. Like, this is how I'm living, but this ain't it. This is not what you raise a child in. Nobody's had to tell them that. They didn't need no textbook. They didn't need to take no pill. That's just that's just like the culture of who we are. Like that's just how we do things. Um and I mean, let's not even just talk about how we do things. It's result, it's show and proof. Like going back to the original subject, I'm kind of just recapping like Father's Day. And I'm thinking about the devastation of how Father's Day is compared to like Mother's Day. Like looking at my husband and my son and seeing how my husband is trying to ensure that he can create a healthy environment for his son to grow up in without having, let's say, that environment himself. So, like, when things go wrong, when things fall apart, as they inevitably will, my husband is always thinking about, okay, when I was a kid, my dad wasn't here to show me step by step. So, like, how do I teach my son step by step? Right. And that was something that I was thinking about when I was saying nowadays, the fact that this man is thinking this way, and specifically this black man is thinking this way. The fact that I, as a black woman, and I will say this, I'm gonna go out on a limb and say, will allow him the opportunity to think that way. There are so many um, nuances within that. I just want to unpack that too. So, like, let me start with the most alarming part. And also, John, I did want to bring this up too, and I'm glad you're in tonight because I was talking about how Michelle Obama is allowing her daughter, and I can't remember her daughter's first name, but I almost called her Melania. But anyway, her daughter is not, you know, keeping her dad's last name on her stuff, all that. And to me, that's crazy. It's like, and I'm just kind of curious because I did see, like, John, I did see your comment when you were saying, like, what's so crazy about her not wanting to have her dad's name, her doing her own thing. And it's like, you can do your own thing and still acknowledge the person who is the head of your house. Or maybe it's the idea that maybe men are not the head of the house to some groups. You know what I mean? Like to in some cultures. Like a lot of me doing this YouTube thing is me learning about other cultures too, because I thought that the idea of taking my dad, I couldn't imagine, like, before I got married, I was like, I could not imagine not having my dad name on me. And my dad was just a construction worker. Like he was, he was, according to society standards, like my dad was a nobody, right? My dad being the president of the United States of America, like, oh, that's kind of embarrassing in my opinion. Like, like, do you? I mean, first of all, it's nearly impossible to become the president of the United States of America. The fact that her dad, and then he's like known as the first black president, and it's like, I wonder what Father's Day was for him. I wonder how it was for him. It says, "How's it crazy? Everything your community." Oh, one thing I will say, in your community, you know why she did it. Okay, I will say number one, Barack Obama is not from my community, so I will give you that, and that's one of the reasons why I'm trying to pick your brain, because maybe Barack Obama has similar ideologies that you do, because if he were a black man from like the United States of America, like if he was like one of my cousins, it's like, yo, like I'll go as far as to say this. I highly doubt, no, Michelle Obama would not have a podcast if he was part of my group, my folks. Um, you know what I think? I feel like Michelle is one of those chicks that get with a guy that she knows she can push around. I can see through Michelle all day long because, like I said, like practically cousins. I'm sure we can trace a similar ancestor somewhere. I'm not from Kenya. I don't know nothing about what they do in Kenya. Um, it says, yeah, and I'm saying it's crazy because, okay, maybe our idea of marriage is different too, because I was wondering if generally people believe in the structure of God, man, woman, child. So I was wondering if that was a belief that you had, or is it like, I've heard some people say that, it's God up top and then men and women are equal, and then it's the children at the bottom. It says the South Side of Chicago is not your community. That's your opinion. You're more than entitled to it. But, as a black woman, when I interact with black people from all of Chicago, um, yeah, we vibe. And I think a lot of people from Chicago came from like Alabama. A lot of black people from the South moved up north. Um, so yeah, you're entitled to your opinion though. Actually, one of my favorite content creators, he's from Chicago, and he's a brother, and we got the same codes down here. But again, it's a cultural difference, and I can't speak on other cultures. Um, I don't know other cultures, but then at the same time, I'm not moved by people who don't understand my culture, um, and people who try to tell me what my culture is. You know what I mean? Say, but they don't vibe with each other. I don't know about that. Um, I've I don't know about that. Um, I don't even know what that means. What do you mean they don't vibe with each other? Um, I'll just have to know what you mean by that. Um, but at any rate, it's like, yeah. And then I did want to answer to my question too. The whole what's the structure? I was just wondering, like, is not, the man supposed to be like, the head of his house, the husband supposed to be the head of the wife? I was just wondering about that because I just feel like, Melania. Why do I keep saying that? I might need to look up what she got going on. I might need to just buy her book, and read it because I just keep thinking about it. But Michelle and Barack, um, I don't know what their dynamic is. I just feel like I almost feel like it's like a political marriage. I don't even feel like it's like a. I feel like they're just both just kind of doing their own thing. Like I feel like they're together to boost each other's career, you know, and it doesn't feel cohesive at all, and it's certainly not anything that I'm familiar with. But and then I don't know, maybe maybe Barack does not feel any kind of way about his wife just kind of doing whatever she want to do, you know. Um, but I have to say, it's just some things that are just not appropriate. It's just not like when you're married, you don't. That it's a social aspect to it, you know. Like I feel like not showing up for your husband and then it affecting the kids a certain way. Like you gotta acknowledge that there's something not right there. I think you are overgeneralizing a very diverse group of people with different beliefs and experience. What are you, John? Like, you, you, like, I'm not talking about a group of people. I'm talking about my people. I don't know if you have a people, but I'm talking about my people. And I am entitled to talk about my own people. I'm not going to sit here and talk to you about China because I'm not Chinese. Like, are you not familiar with the fact that people are connected to their history, in their bloodline, in their family names, in their culture? These things mean something to people. There's a reason why if you call a Chinese person Japanese, it's offensive. You claim to speak for your entire black community. I claim to speak for myself in reference to the condition of my community. Notice I said I've seen my people go through things. And I know my people because I grew up with my people. And yeah, I think about the fact that the communities that I've grown up in are in far worse condition than they were in when I was growing up. They've declined and they're continuing to decline. And it's not just baseless claims I'm making here, there's statistical data to also show that my community, the black community, and come on, John, you really gonna sit? I don't even know if you're here in the United States. You can't be like to just sit here and just be like, oh, everybody, it's all the same. It's not. But again, respectfully, everybody has their opinions, and I respect your opinion. But I'm just telling you what my reality is. Um, and again, this is in reference to like Father's Day. Like, if you talk about Father's Day in the black community, it's not nice, which is crazy. You are saying it's all the same. Oh, I'm saying what I'm saying. I think that's I think that incredibly minimizes what I'm saying. But as always, I respect people's opinion, and I love America, and that's what I love about America. People always have differences of opinion. Um, but yeah, um, Even that example, how we went on that segue, um, and you still didn't answer my question. I'm just really anxious for it. Like, what is the dynamic of a family? Like, are you know, is it 50-50? You know what I mean? Is like everybody just doing their own thing? Is there like not a structure? Because last I checked, the man gives the woman a name, and then the children have the name of their father. And so when your child is taking your name off of herself, that's is that not crazy? Could you imagine getting married and having children and your child denounces your name for her public image? And it's not like you're a felon or anything. Not that I'm taking shots at felons. I'm just saying Barack being the president of the United States, could you imagine one of Donald Trump's kids saying, "Oh, I don't want anybody to associate me with the Trump family"? Huh? Like, and that's like glamorized in the news. Like you don't see any, like that's not weird. Says I'm white, I've lived in white communities. That doesn't mean I speak for the white community. Okay, that's fine. You don't have to speak for them. That's cool. You know, you don't have to do anything. Welcome to America. I'm just talking about my experiences, my community, my folks, and what I'm seeing in the condition of my people. And it's not good, John. It's not good. Like the bad things that's been going on in the black community, they're not even seen as bad anymore. Like they're it's not it's not sad to not have a family structure anymore. When I was growing up, not having a family structure was a tragedy. Now it's glorified. Being on welfare was embarrassing. Now it's glamorized. Not knowing who your child's father was like that was hush. You would like the having children out of wedlock in and of itself was a shameful thing. Now it's the norm. That's a decline. That's all I'm saying. So for Father's Day, we can't even get together and celebrate the heads of household the way we used to. When I was growing up, the fathers got together for Father's Day. They got together with their wives and their children. You know, even if you weren't Christian, church was like one of those places where you gathered, regardless of your religious beliefs. We don't have none of that anymore. And I grew up in a time period where I got to that middle point between the folks who are old enough to remember, like, duh, this is the Haley house, this is the Bell house, this is the Simmons house, in contrast to, oh, well, I don't even know who my daddy is. I got to live in the middle of that. I'm seeing the difference in that. And that is sad. It's very sad. Um, Even like looking at my own generation, the fact that my dad's kids in particular, we can't come together because you got that person mama over here, that person mama over there. That's a problem. Now, divorce, that's one thing. But just people just having kids, who your daddy, who that person's daddy, that's crazy. That's not normal. And it's dysfunctional. And it's also causing issues in the younger generation. And for me to sit here and I see the, what you call it, the decline. Days like Father's Day. The fact that there used to be a content creator that talked about how for Mother's Day, church packed, black community. Yes, there is a black community. And also keep in mind, we were brought here in ships. We were sold everywhere to different people, different plantations, things like that. Then we were segregated. Yeah, we're gonna develop communities. It's not a random thing. In the black community, the church is always packed on Mother's Day. Father's Day, if anything, maybe it's some father figures in there, but it's not the fact that it's different, the dynamic is so different now. That's scary. And you know what? Maybe we're going into a new age too. Cause just because I'm self-aware and just because I'm aware of people around me doesn't mean that I have to bend my reality for the comfort of others. This is what I mean by that. There are a lot of people who say, oh, we're all the same. Okay. And they're entitled to feel that way. They have a right to their opinion. But just because I can acknowledge the fact that someone has a difference of opinion than me doesn't mean that I have to try to enforce my reality on them, if that makes any sense. So you may never see where I'm coming from or what my thoughts are. That's the beauty of being diverse. That's the beauty of being different. And that's fine. But at the same time, when I'm looking at my situation and I'm judging my situation and I'm seeing, like, if my kids go to a black school, that's going to be a problem. That's going to be rough on them. Just like, which is crazy because if they go to a white school, in my opinion, I don't think it's going to be equally rough because, again, the culture is different. They go to a Latino school, it's going to be a different culture. It's going to be a different dynamic because people have cultures. People are different. But I know, like, say, when I went to a black school, because, like, when I was in elementary school, my mom first sent me to a white school, took me out of there, and then put me in a black school. And the issues that plagued the black community, I was met on with it immediately. For example, a lot of the black kids were born out of wedlock. A lot of them didn't know who their father were, didn't know who their father was. So I was automatically made fun of because my parents were married. I have family members who have kids, and their kids get picked on because their kids are born in wedlock. Now, again, John, to your point, you being white and coming from the white community, I don't know what the quirk is with the white community. I'm not white. I didn't grow up there. I don't know. A lot of people will look at white people and go, "Oh, they're privileged. They're the new slur for white people. You're a colonizer. You're this and that." Okay, I don't know the hardships of the white community. I'm not. I'm not that. But I do know the hardships of my community. I grew up in it. I've experienced it. I've been in white spaces, Latino spaces, immigrant spaces. And yeah, people acknowledge my demographic. It means something, just like your demographic. As a white male, you walk around with a suit on, somebody can see you as a politician or, somebody of high status. My husband, he go walk around in a suit. They might see him as on his way to court. You know, like, yeah, this is real. These things matter. This is reality. And it's an ugly reality. It's an ugly truth. But it's the human condition. Nothing is ever good enough. We are all, every day, our life gets shorter and shorter. We're just made of time. And when we run out, it is what it is. And because of that, our differences affect our environment. It's as simple as that. So, me seeing, like, again, even with my generation, I have kids who are born within wedlock. I'm getting ready for what they're going to have to deal with. Here's another thing about being black, coming from the black community. I've heard a content creator, black man from Chicago, by the way, was talking about how there's a 8 out of 10 chance that a black child is born outside of wedlock. And he said in his next breath, so when you see a black woman with a child, you pretty much know she's a single mom. How could he assume that? People see me in the market with my children all the time, and they assume since their father is not physically there, that I'm taking care of them by myself. Oh, well, because statistics show. And let's just be real, it's not just on a piece of paper. When I go down to Charlotte and I go hang out with women my age and they got kids, a lot of times them kids do not have the same father. Not only do them kids not have the same father, that woman ain't been married one day in her life. Ain't never been nobody's wife. At most, she'll say, I've been proposed to. She'll talk about a guy getting down on one knee or a guy giving her an engagement ring. And that's a problem. So then when I was going to school, and, you know, I'm excited because my parents' anniversary is coming up. And I'm talking to my colleagues about, my mom and dad, they would have been married for X amount of years by now. My father was living. These kids, they don't even know what an anniversary is. Did you know that there are kids out here that don't even know what marriage is? Like one of my big brother's baby mama's kids, not all of those kids were his, and they were thinking that my husband and I, we were rich. That's why we got married. Only rich people can afford to get married. That is so bad when people don't even know what what marriage is. Only rich people get married? Justice of the Peace is right down the street, costs less than $100 to get a marriage license to be legally married. And you got people out here thinking they need to buy a $20,000 dress. That's sad. I was born in the 90s. These kids were born in the early 2000s. Do you know how steep of a decline that is within 10 years? I bet you the white community know what marriage is. I bet you the white community right now, they might be pushing LGBTQ. We don't know what a woman is, but you know what a wife is. And my community, that what I just said, the fact that I put woman and wife in the same sentence, that's offensive. Oh, just because she got a child don't mean she need to be married. I can't tell you how many people have called me a pick me. Like, oh, your husband always gone, he always working, you slaving. How am I slaving? Let's just talk about another point. During slavery, excuse me, black people, sorry about that. We basically were bought and sold and had to serve until the day that we died. I am doing the same thing that my foremothers had to do for their masters. My foremothers had to serve their slave masters, and they got nothing. And then their children got nothing. And we did this for generations. I do the same thing. but it's for my own family, which, here we go, benefits eventually my community. And that's slavery, which is crazy. And let's say if I choose not to do these things, if I choose not to take care of my family, it's just going to put my community in more of a bad place than it already is in. Which leads me to know this. We've been trained as Black people to think that being normal is bad. Having a normal life is bad. Having a father on Father's Day is controversial. That's scary. That's not normal. I don't know of any other community that doesn't celebrate having their family together, having a functional family. How is that even a thing? And now it's become a norm. So, surprisingly, I think this is my longest live stream, but I do appreciate the feedback and I do appreciate all the thoughts that came into the chat. And this is kind of a nice little setup here. I might just, I don't know, every time I do a live and it go this smooth, I'll be like, I don't even know. I might just make this might be my thing because, you know, usually I had to get up off of here because the kids, I keep saying kids with an S. Jazz usually get up, she start fussing, so I gotta go get her. But hey, as long as I'm sitting in the room with them, because they was not letting me leave the room tonight. I put them down so they can go to sleep. And they good to go. But this is cool. I might just set the whole lab up in here. Might get a little table because that way I can kind of multitask. But yeah, I have to say, you guys, like, I do appreciate everybody stopping in. And shout out to John. Didn't mean to touch a nerve if I did. But Father's Day need to be better for my community, for the Black community. It does. I don't know about all the other communities. I'm not here to be an oracle of such to everybody else. I'm just talking based off my own experiences. And if you got a channel, it'd be nice to check out your platform and see what your opinion is. But until then, y'all have a nice night. And I appreciate the time with y'all. And I'll catch y'all on the next live.